The arrival of the Zolan delegation. In the distant future, humanity had spread across the stars, establishing diplomatic relations with a myriad of alien civilizations. Among them were the Zolans, a species renowned for their strict adherence to protocol and ceremonial etiquette. When the Zolan delegation arrived at the human Galactic embassy on the space station Horizon, tensions were high. It was their first official visit, and a lot depended on the success of this mission. Ambassador Michael Reyes, a seasoned diplomat with years of experience in interspecies negotiations, was tasked with welcoming the Zolans. He had meticulously prepared for this day, studying every aspect of Zolan culture to ensure a smooth interaction. The Zolan leader, Ambassador Zelex, was known for being highly traditional, and any misstep could lead to diplomatic disaster. However, standing by Ambassador Reyes' side was Lieutenant Sarah Quinn, a young and ambitious officer who was known for her curious nature. She often viewed things from a human perspective, sometimes forgetting that not all species saw the world through the same lens. Sarah had a habit of infusing a little humor into tense situations, something that worked well with humans, but might not be ideal with aliens like the Zolans. As the Zolan delegation disembarked from their sleek, silver starship, Ambassador Reyes stepped forward with a formal greeting. "Welcome to Horizon Station, esteemed Ambassador Zelex and the Honorable Zolan delegation. We are honored by your presence." Zelex, a tall, slender being with luminous blue skin and piercing silver eyes, nodded gravely. "We appreciate the hospitality, Ambassador Reyes. The Zolan Empire values order and precision in all things. We trust this visit will be the beginning of a prosperous alliance." Sarah stood nearby, observing the interaction. Everything seemed to be going according to plan until Zelex's assistant, a Zolan named Crix, stepped forward with a question. "We have heard much about human traditions and customs. Are there any special rituals we should be aware of to honor our visit?" Sarah, always quick to offer a response, couldn't resist. "Oh, we have a lot of fun traditions. One of our favorites is something called the Welcome Challenge. It's a human way of celebrating new friendships. Would you like to participate?" Ambassador Reyes shot her a look of horror, but before he could intervene, Zelex raised an intrigued eyebrow. "A challenge, you say? The Zolan people respect challenges as a way of proving one's worth. What does this entail?" Sarah, realizing that she was in too deep, quickly invented something on the spot. "Well, it's a simple game, really. You throw a soft object at someone, and if they catch it, it symbolizes trust and cooperation." Zelex exchanged a glance with Crix, who nodded approvingly. "This seems acceptable. Let us participate in this human tradition." Ambassador Reyes' heart sank. There was no backing out now. The challenge gone awry. Ambassador Reyes could only watch as Sarah scrambled to find something suitable for the Welcome Challenge. She rummaged through a nearby storage unit and pulled out the only soft object she could find, a piece of cheese from the station's commissary. It was gorgonzola, a notoriously pungent cheese known for its strong smell and crumbly texture. Sarah hesitated for a moment, knowing this was not her best idea, but with Zelex and Crix waiting expectantly, she had no choice. She handed the cheese to Zelex, trying to keep her tone light. "Here you go. Just toss it gently, and if I catch it, it means we're off to a great start." Zelex took the cheese in his long, delicate fingers, eyeing it with curiosity. "This is a strange object, but if it symbolizes cooperation, I shall honor your tradition." With that, he threw the cheese towards Sarah. To her credit, she caught it easily, though the strong smell made her wince. The Zolan delegation remained expressionless, but there was a momentary pause before Zelex spoke again. "We have completed your challenge, Lieutenant. What does this signify?" Sarah grinned nervously. "It means we're officially allies now." Just as the awkward moment seemed to pass, Crix stepped forward. In the Zolan Empire, once a challenge is issued, it must be returned. It is only fair that we challenge you as well. Before Sarah could react, Crix picked up a piece of the gorgonzola and hurled it back at her with impressive speed. The cheese hit her squarely in the chest, leaving a sticky, smelly smear on her uniform. The Zolan delegation stood in silence, their serious expressions unchanging. Ambassador Reyes buried his face in his hands. This was not how diplomatic missions were supposed to go. Diplomatic fallout. As the awkward silence continued, the station's communication system crackled to life. Ambassador Reyes, this is Commander Norix of the Tselon Confederation. We have just received word of a peculiar incident involving the Zolan delegation. Is everything all right? Ambassador Reyes groaned internally. News of the cheese challenge had spread far too quickly. He straightened up and responded, Commander Norix, we had a slight misunderstanding involving human traditions. We are working to resolve it peacefully. Zelex, who had been quietly observing, suddenly spoke. Ambassador Reyes, I must inform you that in Zolan culture, challenges are not taken lightly. This cheese challenge may seem trivial to humans, but to us, it is a test of honor. We expect a formal resolution. Sarah, now feeling the weight of her actions, stepped forward. Ambassador Zelex, I deeply apologize. I didn't mean to offend your people. I was only trying to share a part of our culture, but I realize now that I acted without understanding the full implications. Zelex's piercing gaze softened slightly. Lieutenant Quinn, it is clear that your intentions were not malicious. However, the Zolan people cannot ignore the significance of what has transpired. We must request a formal ceremony of reconciliation. Ambassador Reyes nodded. We will arrange for a proper diplomatic ceremony, one that honors both human and Zolan traditions. As the tension began to ease, Sarah breathed a sigh of relief. The situation had not escalated to an intergalactic conflict yet, but she knew that this was only the beginning. The next steps would determine whether this would be a successful alliance or a diplomatic disaster. The ceremony of reconciliation. The following day, the space station Horizon was transformed for the reconciliation ceremony. Both human and Zolan representatives gathered in the Grand Hall, surrounded by holographic displays of their respective cultures. The atmosphere was heavy with anticipation, as both sides prepared to mend the rift caused by the cheese challenge. Ambassador Reyes stood at the front of the hall, flanked by Sarah and a group of human diplomats. On the other side, Ambassador Zelex and his Zolan delegation stood tall, their blue skin shimmering under the station's artificial lights. Reyes spoke first. We are here today to reaffirm our commitment to peace and cooperation. Let this ceremony be a symbol of our willingness to learn from each other, to respect each other's traditions, and to build a future together. Zelex stepped forward, his voice calm and measured. The Zolan Empire values strength, honor, and unity. We recognize the sincerity of the humans in resolving this matter, and we are ready to move forward in our relationship. As the ceremony continued, both sides exchanged symbolic gestures of peace. No cheese involved this time. The tension that had once filled the air slowly dissipated, replaced by a growing sense of mutual understanding. In the end, the cheese challenge had not led to an intergalactic war, but rather a deeper connection between two very different species. The unexpected alliance. In the aftermath of the reconciliation ceremony, relations between humanity and the Zolan Empire seemed to improve rapidly. Despite the rocky start, the Zolans were intrigued by human creativity and adaptability, while humans were fascinated by the Zolans' rigid adherence to tradition and their meticulous sense of honor. Weeks passed, and the once tense atmosphere aboard Horizon Station had shifted into one of cautious optimism. Joint training sessions were held between human and Zolan military personnel, cultural exchanges took place, and scientists from both species began working together on advanced technologies. What had begun as a diplomatic crisis was now evolving into a promising alliance. But beneath the surface, not everything was as peaceful as it appeared. One day, Lieutenant Sarah Quinn was in the middle of overseeing a joint training session when she was summoned to a secure briefing with Ambassador Reyes. She walked briskly through the sleek corridors of Horizon Station, her mind racing with curiosity. It had been quiet since the cheese incident, and Sarah had come to believe that the worst was behind her. However, as she entered the briefing room, she immediately knew something was wrong. Ambassador Reyes sat at the head of the table, flanked by Commander John Harris, the station's military chief. Both men wore grim expressions, and the holographic display in the center of the room showed a tactical map of a nearby star system. Lieutenant Quinn, Reyes began, "We've received some troubling intelligence." Sarah took a seat, her stomach tightening. "What's going on, sir?" Commander Harris leaned forward. "We've intercepted communications from a rogue faction within the Zolan Empire. They're not happy with the alliance being formed between our two species. In fact, they view humanity as a threat to the Zolan way of life." Sarah's brow furrowed. "I thought the Zolan Empire was united in their values. How could there be a rogue faction?" Reyes sighed. "It appears that not all Zolans are in agreement with the peaceful course their leadership is taking. This faction, known as the Arkel, believes that Zolan purity must be maintained, and they see humanity's influence as a corruption. We've been monitoring their activities for some time, but now it seems they're planning something more dangerous." Harris pointed to the star map. "They've been gathering ships and resources in the Naxxon system, just beyond our borders. We believe they're preparing for an attack, not just on Horizon Station, but on Earth itself." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. "An attack on Earth? How soon?" "We don't know for sure," Reyes said, his voice grave. "But we need to act fast. We've already informed the Zolan leadership, and they've assured us they're dealing with the threat internally. However, we can't take any chances. We need to be prepared to defend ourselves." Sarah's mind raced with questions, but one thing was clear. This situation was far more dangerous than anything she had anticipated. A fractured empire. While the human diplomats and military officials on Horizon Station prepared for the possibility of an attack, tensions were mounting within the Zolan Empire itself. Ambassador Zelix, who had been instrumental in forming the alliance with humanity, found himself under increasing pressure from his own people. The Arkel faction was growing in strength, and their rhetoric of Zolan superiority and isolationism was gaining followers. Zelix had always believed in the power of cooperation. He had fought for years to bring the Zolan Empire into the Galactic fold, to form alliances and share knowledge with other species. But now that vision was under threat. The Arkel's leader, a charismatic and ruthless Zolan named Varish, was openly calling for rebellion. Varish had been a rising star within the Zolan military, known for his brilliance in strategy and combat. But his rigid belief in Zolan purity had set him at odds with Zelix and the more progressive members of the Empire's leadership. Now, he was using the recent alliance with humanity as a rallying point, accusing Zelix of betraying their species by allowing lesser beings to influence Zolan culture. In a secret council meeting, Zelix confronted Varish. "You're leading our people down a path of destruction," Zelix said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "The galaxy is vast, and we cannot survive alone. Our strength lies in cooperation, in learning from other species." Varish sneered, his silver eyes gleaming with disdain. "You've grown weak, Zelix. You've let the humans cloud your judgment. They are nothing compared to us. Their chaotic nature, their lack of discipline, it will only bring ruin to the Zolan Empire." "They are creative, adaptable," Zelix countered. "These are strengths, not weaknesses. If you cannot see that, you are blind to the future." Varish's face twisted in anger. "The future I see is one where the Zolan Empire reigns supreme, untainted by alien influences. I will not let you destroy everything we've built." With that, Varish stormed out of the council chambers, leaving Zelix to wonder just how far his former ally would go to achieve his twisted vision. The battle for Naxxon system. As tensions escalated within the Zolan Empire, the rogue faction's plans came into focus. The Arkel had amassed a fleet of warships in the Naxxon system, and their objective was clear. They intended to strike Horizon Station and then move on to Earth, wiping out humanity before the alliance could solidify. On Horizon Station, preparations were in full swing. Commander Harris worked tirelessly with his team, coordinating defense strategies and readying the station's weapons systems. Ambassador Reyes was in constant communication with Earth and the Zolan leadership, trying to secure reinforcements. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Sarah Quinn found herself thrust into a new role, leading a covert mission to sabotage the Arkel fleet. The mission was risky. Sarah, along with a small team of elite operatives, would have to infiltrate the Naxxon system, plant explosives on key Arkel warships, and disable their fleet before the attack could begin. It was a near-impossible task, but one that could save countless lives. As the team prepared to depart, Sarah felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. She had always been known for her quick thinking and resourcefulness, but this mission was unlike anything she had ever faced. Failure was not an option. The mission began smoothly enough. Sarah and her team used stealth technology to slip past the Arkel patrols and land on one of the warships. They moved quickly, planting the explosives and preparing to make their escape. But just as they were about to leave, they were spotted. An alarm blared through the warship, and suddenly Sarah and her team were surrounded. Blaster fire erupted around them as they fought their way to the exit, but it was clear they were outnumbered and outgunned. Sarah's heart raced as she led her team through the narrow corridors of the ship. She knew they were running out of time. The explosives were set to detonate in minutes, and they needed to get out before the whole ship went up in flames. With seconds to spare, they reached their shuttle and blasted off, just as the Arkel warship exploded behind them in a brilliant burst of light. The mission was a success, but Sarah knew the fight was far from over. The final confrontation. The sabotage mission had dealt a significant blow to the Arkel fleet, but Varish was not finished. He regrouped what remained of his forces and prepared for one final assault on Horizon Station. Meanwhile, the Zolan leadership, now fully aware of the threat posed by the rogue faction, sent their own fleet to intercept Varish. The battle for Horizon Station was about to begin. As the two fleets converged in the cold vacuum of space, the tension aboard the station was palpable. Ambassador Reyes stood at the command center, overseeing the station's defenses. Commander Harris coordinated with the human fleet, while Sarah prepared to lead the ground forces in case of a boarding assault. The first shots were fired as Varish's fleet engaged the Zolan loyalists. Massive warships clashed, their weapons lighting up the darkness of space in a deadly dance of destruction. Horizon Station shook as it was hit by enemy fire, but its shields held strong. Inside the station, Sarah led her team through the chaotic corridors, ready to repel any invaders. She knew Varish would not give up easily, and his forces were determined to breach the station's defenses. As the battle raged on, Sarah found herself face to face with Varish himself. He had managed to infiltrate the station with a small team of elite soldiers, intent on taking the command center and turning the tide of the battle in his favor. The two locked eyes, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. Varish's expression was one of cold determination, while Sarah's was filled with resolve. This was the moment that would decide the fate of both their species. The fight that followed was fierce. Sarah's agility and quick thinking were matched by Varish's brutal strength and combat experience. Blaster fire echoed through the corridors as the two clashed, neither willing to back down. In the end, it was Sarah's ingenuity that gave her the upper hand. Using the environment to her advantage, she managed to disable Varish's weapon and land a decisive blow, knocking him unconscious. With Varish captured and his forces in disarray, the battle came to an end. The Zolan loyalists, along with the human fleet, had triumphed. A new beginning. The aftermath of the battle brought relief and hope. The Arkel faction had been defeated, and Varish was taken into custody to face trial for his crimes. The Zolan Empire, now united once again, reaffirmed its commitment to the alliance with humanity. Ambassador Zelix, standing beside Ambassador Reyes and Lieutenant Sarah Quinn, addressed a gathering of both human and Zolan representatives. Today, we stand together as allies, stronger than ever before, Zelix said, his voice filled with pride. This victory is not just a military one, it is a triumph of cooperation, understanding, and the belief that we are greater together than we are apart. Sarah, still recovering from the battle, smiled as she listened to Zelex's words. She had come a long way since the cheese incident, and while there had been many challenges along the way, she had proven herself as a leader and a diplomat. As the ceremony concluded, Sarah couldn't help but think about the future. The alliance between humanity and the Zolan Empire was still in its infancy, but it had the potential to reshape the galaxy. And as she looked out at the stars, Sarah knew that this was only the beginning of a new chapter in interstellar history. Reflections and legacy. Months after the battle, Horizon Station had become a symbol of unity between the Zolans and humanity. Joint missions in science, trade, and exploration had flourished, and other species were beginning to take notice of the powerful bond between the two civilizations. Ambassador Reyes was commended for his diplomatic skills, while Sarah Quinn became something of a legend. Her actions during the Arkel crisis were the subject of countless stories, some of which had already grown into grand myths. The cheese incident was no longer seen as a blunder, but as a humorous prelude to her rise as one of the most respected figures in the Alliance. In the years to come, the story of how a simple prank nearly led to intergalactic war, but ultimately forged an unbreakable bond between two civilizations, would be told throughout the galaxy. And whenever people looked back on those early days of the Human-Zolan Alliance, they would remember the lesson that Sarah had learned, that even the smallest actions can have the greatest impact. Humanity's future among the stars was now secure, and Sarah Quinn would be remembered as one of the key figures who had made it possible. Reflections and legacy. Months after the battle, Horizon Station had become a symbol of unity between the Zolans and humanity. Joint missions in science, trade, and exploration had flourished, and other species were beginning to take notice of the powerful bond between the two civilizations. Ambassador Reyes was commended for his diplomatic skills, while Sarah Quinn became something of a legend. Her actions during the Arkel crisis were the subject of countless stories, some of which had already grown into grand myths. The cheese incident was no longer seen as a blunder, but as a humorous prelude to her rise as one of the most respected figures in the Alliance. In the years to come, the story of how a simple prank nearly led to intergalactic war, but ultimately forged an unbreakable bond between two civilizations, would be told throughout the galaxy. And whenever people looked back on those early days of the Human-Zolan Alliance, they would remember the lesson that Sarah had learned, that even the smallest actions can have the greatest impact. Humanity's future among the stars was now secure, and Sarah Quinn would be remembered as one of the key figures who had made it possible. Horizon Station, now a symbol of peace and unity, shimmered against the backdrop of stars, its sleek silver spires catching the distant glow of nearby nebulae. The scars of the recent battle had been repaired, and the station was once again a bustling hub of interstellar activity. Zolan ships floated peacefully alongside human vessels, their once foreign shapes now familiar, as if they had always been part of this shared sky. Lieutenant Sarah Quinn stood alone on one of the station's observation decks, gazing out at the vast expanse of space. Her reflection shimmered on the reinforced glass, but her focus was on the stars beyond. The weight of recent events hung heavily in her thoughts. The alliance with the Zolan Empire was fragile, but its potential was immense. A single misstep could have doomed it all, but now it was on the cusp of becoming something far greater than anyone had imagined. A soft chime echoed through the room, announcing the arrival of someone behind her. Sarah didn't need to turn to know who it was. "Ambassador Zelex," she said, her voice soft but steady. "You're up early." The tall Zolan diplomat stepped forward, his quiet, purposeful movements betraying the grace of his people. His silver eyes, once so alien, now held a familiarity and warmth that reflected the bond between them. "I could say the same for you, Lieutenant," Zelex replied, his deep, resonant voice carrying an air of calm. He paused beside her, his gaze drifting to the same distant stars. "The battle may be over, but I sense your mind is not at rest." Sarah sighed, crossing her arms as she leaned against the railing. It's hard to stop thinking about it. Everything we've been through, everything we've fought for. There were so many moments when it could have gone the other way. The Archael, Varish, we were so close to losing everything. Zelek's eyes softened. War has a way of magnifying both our best and worst instincts. But you did not lose. You prevailed. And more than that, you helped us forge a future we never thought possible. I suppose, Sarah murmured, her voice reflective. But what happens now? Sure, we've won the battle, but peace, real peace, that's a lot harder to maintain. Zelek nodded, his face thoughtful. True peace requires vigilance, sacrifice, and above all, understanding. The Archael may have been defeated, but the ideologies they represented will linger. There will always be those who resist change, who fear the unknown. And what about you? Sarah asked, turning to him. The Zolan Empire, your people, do they really want this alliance? Or are we just delaying another conflict? Zelek let the silence stretch between them before answering. There are those who still doubt, those who believe we are compromising our values by aligning with humanity. But change, Lieutenant Quinn, is never easy. What matters is that we continue to walk this path together. Trust, once built, will hold stronger than fear. Sarah considered his words, and for a moment, the only sound was the soft hum of the station's systems. Then, a slight smile tugged at the corner of her lips. You know, I used to think diplomacy was just a bunch of fancy words and handshakes. Now, I get it. It's about the long game. It's about people like you and me making sure that this alliance doesn't fall apart, no matter what. Zelek smiled, his expression one of approval. And that, Lieutenant, is why you have become such an important figure in this alliance. You see beyond the immediate, into the potential. As they stood in silence, watching a Zolan battleship glide past the station, Sarah's communicator buzzed softly. She glanced down at it, seeing a message from Commander Harris. The Zolan and human leadership had convened for the final peace accords, and both ambassadors were requested to attend the historic signing. Well, Sarah said, pocketing the device, looks like it's time to make this official. Zelek nodded, but before they turned to leave, he spoke again, his tone more sullen. Lieutenant Quinn, there is something I've been meaning to say. Sarah raised an eyebrow, sensing the seriousness in his voice. What is it? You have not only earned the respect of your own people, but of mine as well, Zelek said, his gaze unwavering. But more than that, you have earned my gratitude. Without your efforts, this alliance would have crumbled before it even began. You have shown us that strength does not always come from power, but from understanding and the will to bridge divides. Sarah blinked, momentarily taken aback. She had been recognized by her superiors and commended for her actions, but hearing it from Zelek felt different, more personal. His words carried the weight of a leader who had risked everything on a fragile hope, and who had found a true ally in the unlikeliest of places. I just did what I thought was right, Sarah said, her voice quieter than usual. That is precisely why you are exceptional, Zelek replied, and why our future will be brighter because of individuals like you. For a moment, I stood in silence, the enormity of the moment sinking in. Then together, they turned and walked toward the exit, ready to take their places at the peace accords. The grand chamber where the final peace accord would be signed was a magnificent sight. High dome ceilings arched overhead, adorned with holographic projections of stars and constellations from both the Milky Way and the Zolan home system. Representatives from both species filled the room, their voices hushed in anticipation of the historic moment. At the center of the chamber stood a large, circular table, with two chairs facing each other, one for Ambassador Reyes, the other for Ambassador Zelek. Between them, on a pedestal, rested a data tablet that contained the official peace agreement, a document that would forever change the course of history. Sarah took her place at the edge of the room, watching as Zelek and Reyes entered, each flanked by their respective delegations. The atmosphere was thick with tension and expectation, but also with hope. This was the culmination of months of work, of battles fought, and of friendships forged. As the ambassadors took their seats, the room fell silent. Reyes spoke first, his voice calm and resolute. Today, we stand at the threshold of a new era, one where our two species, once separated by vast distances and even greater differences, come together as allies. This accord is not just a piece of paper, it is a promise. A promise to build a future where our children can grow up in peace, where we can learn from one another, and where we can face the challenges of the galaxy as one. Zelix nodded in agreement, his voice echoing through the chamber as he spoke. The Zolan people have long valued honor, tradition, and strength. But today, we recognize that true strength lies not in isolation, but in unity. This alliance marks the beginning of a journey that will challenge us in ways we cannot yet foresee, but I have faith that together we will rise to meet those challenges. With that, both ambassadors reached for the data tablet, their fingers hovering above the holographic interface. For a brief moment, time seemed to pause, as if the galaxy itself was holding its breath. Then, with a simultaneous motion, they signed the peace accord. The room erupted into applause, the sound reverberating off the chamber walls. It was done. The alliance was official, and a new chapter had begun. As the applause died down, Sarah allowed herself a small smile. She caught Zelix's eye across the room, and he gave her a subtle nod of acknowledgement. It wasn't over, not by a long shot. There would be more challenges, more struggles ahead. But in that moment, as she stood among friends and allies, she felt a sense of hope that she hadn't felt in a long time. The stars outside seemed a little brighter, the vastness of space a little less daunting. And for the first time, Sarah Quinn truly believed that humanity's future among the stars was secure. Together with the Zolan Empire, they will explore new worlds, overcome new obstacles, and perhaps, just perhaps, find their place in the galaxy. The dawn of a new era had begun. Final scene. Later that evening, Sarah found herself alone once again on the observation deck, watching as the stars drifted by. The peace accords had been signed, but the work ahead was daunting. Yet, for the first time in what felt like forever, she wasn't worried. The door slid open behind her, and Ambassador Reyes stepped into the room. He joined her by the window, his expression as calm and collected as ever. "You did good, Sarah," he said quietly. She smiled, her eyes still fixed on the stars. "We all did." Reyes nodded, and for a moment, they stood in comfortable silence, watching the endless horizon beyond. "We're just at the beginning," he said finally. "There's so much more to come." Sarah turned to him, her expression resolute. "I know, and I'm ready." Together, they looked out at the vast expanse of the galaxy, a galaxy that now held endless possibilities, not just for humanity and the Zolan Empire, but for all who dared to dream of peace among the stars.